Hi everybody, the purpose of this video is to unpack assignment number 1 for EDST618 and just to go through a couple of the updates that I have made to the documentation in an effort to make the assignment task as clear as possible. So the first update is that the submission date has been pushed back. So the assignment is now due on Sunday the 22nd of April at 11:59 p.m. And the submission will be via Leo. At the moment, a Turnitin assignment Dropbox is available, but depending on the type of multimedia you decide to use, I'll also need to open up a conventional Leo Dropbox because Turnitin doesn't work with some multimedia. However, this is not an issue, and as we approach the 22nd of April, we can have a conversation about that and decide which will be the most appropriate submission format for each of you individually. So assignment number 1. Assignment number 1, as per the unit outline, is to consider a pedagogical framework surrounding the use of digital technologies for learning that is suited to your teaching context or your learning context if you're still currently a pre-service teacher. Discuss how this framework links to current multimedia initiatives. Submit as an online multimedia presentation. And the purpose of this is for you to design an improved learning environment that displays evidence of your analysis of a pedagogical framework and Australian policy initiatives. Now this description and this purpose can be found in the published unit outline for the unit. What I have done is I've made some amendments to the rubric. I think there are improvements as they unpack these tasks more, and I'll explain this for you now. So the criteria remain the same, and when you look at the republished rubric, which I've now put onto Leo, you'll see that, and by the way, the original rubric is still there for you, so you can also still look at that as well to see that changes, key changes, are only in the language rather than in what is required of you. So when you look at the new rubric, you will notice that the requirements for an HD, a distinction, a credit, a pass, and a potentially unsuccessful assignment submission have not changed. They are still word for word the same. What I have updated is the wording in each criterion. So it's been elaborated on and it has been unpacked. And importantly, I have changed the order of the 3 criteria as they appeared in the original rubric in an effort to provide a more meaningful sequence in your thinking, your learning, and your development of your assignment. So I'm now going to go through the 3 criteria and just explain how they've been unpacked a little bit. When you look on Leo and you look at the new assessment number 1 rubric, it'll look something like this. And as you will notice, I've already said that in the main thrust of the rubric, so in the descriptions for the particular grades, that has not changed. In the criteria on the left-hand side, they've been moved around a little bit. But we're still focusing on pedagogical frameworks, on the learning environment, and contemporary learning. And I'm now going to go through those individually to explain how you might approach them. So the first criteria is the one that focuses on the pedagogical framework. And you will remember from the description of the assignment that you are to consider a pedagogical framework surrounding the use of digital technologies for learning that is suited to your teaching context, and you're to discuss how this framework links to the current Australian policy initiatives. So looking at criteria number 1 is the research into an analysis of a pedagogical framework underpinning the use of digital technologies for learning as suited to your teaching and learning context. So this is how I suggest that you approach this particular criterion. You provide an overview of your current teaching or learning context, including pedagogical frameworks or framework, and approach to the use of digital technologies within that context. So what is the pedagogical approach, the pedagogical framework to the use of digital technologies within your current teaching or learning context. And that will take a bit of exploration, a bit of thinking. In the week 3 readings, I put up a really helpful diagram of some of the different theories and thinking around learning. So you might like to access that, see if any of it is resonating with you. You also will need to select and describe a new pedagogical framework. So once you've identified the one that is currently in place, you will then need to do some research to select another framework that might be appropriate and that will enhance what is happening in your learning or your teaching context. It may be that this is actually just an improvement on the existing framework, but there will be something that you can draw upon that provides new knowledge, new thinking, and new ways of working with digital technology in your particular context. You will obviously need to identify current Australian policy initiatives that impact on digital technologies in contemporary learning environments. And in week 4 of the readings, in week 4 of the readings, we're going to be looking at some of those Australian policy initiatives. And finally, within this particular criterion, and this is really important, you're going to conduct an analysis of the value of your newly selected pedagogical framework in relation to current Australian policy initiatives. And if you look through the revamped rubric, you'll see how you might be able to meet this particular criterion and those components of the criterion as you develop it. Just a word on that. The pedagogical framework criterion was actually the third one in the original rubric, and it's now the first one, because I think that this is the work that you need to do first in order to complete the assignment task. So the second criterion applies to learning environments, and in this, you apply your analysis and understanding of the new pedagogical framework that you have selected to the enhancement of your current teaching and learning context, whilst attending to the necessities of current Australian policy initiatives. So, going back to the description and the purpose of the assignment task, as per the unit outline, is to design an improved learning environment that displays evidence of your analysis and of your pedagogical framework and Australian policy initiatives. So criterion number 2 is taking what you have done here in criterion number 1, which is the selection and identification of a framework and policy initiatives respectively, and then the analysis of those. And what you're doing is you're applying this to your current teaching or learning context with a view to improvement. So you might want to do this by describing key aspects of contemporary learning environments. You may wish to provide evidence that your enhanced learning environment promotes and encourages contemporary learning. So you'd want to describe your new enhanced learning environment as per your analysis in criterion number 1, and provide evidence of how that is actually going to encourage contemporary learning. And also provide evidence of the strengths of your new approach and your new approach using this new framework. Criterion number 3 is an understanding of contemporary educational settings and the relevance of theory informing contemporary practice, whilst attending to an appropriate use of multimedia and APA referencing. So in the original rubric, this was the first criterion. It's now the third criterion, because this really sort of, it's underpinning and encapsulating everything you do in the first 2. So in this, you might want to approach it by providing evidence of research-informed understanding about contemporary educational settings. So, when we're looking at, particularly in week 3, as an example, we've had a look at the instrumental genesis lens. the interdimensional genesis sort of theory has been around for a while, but it's beginning to pick up pace again, and there's some really interesting conversations happening about the socio-cultural aspects of it, activity theory, and how we actually negotiate our relationships with hardware and with software in order to make them work. And this particular reading, I found very interesting. So how is current research informing what we're doing in contemporary educational settings, particularly with digital technology? Provide evidence of research-informed understanding about the importance of theory-informed practice. So, the practicalities of teaching are very important, but where we have really rich teaching is where it is interwoven with theory. Also within this criterion is the appropriate use of multimedia, which shows an understanding of its value within education. So the value of multimedia within education, aka digital technologies, and the correct use of APA 6th. So whilst the criteria for assignment number 2 have been unpacked and sort of expanded on, in the sense that I've given you more to think of, or I've given you clearer angles in which to think about the assignment task. I haven't given you more work. I've given you clearer angles of how to think about it. They are exactly the same as the first rubric, and the standards have not changed. So what I'd like you to do is go through the new rubric and think about whether, and get back to me as to whether this now makes a bit more sense, and whether it makes a bit more of a connection as to what we're doing in our thinking. So especially in terms of week 3, week 4, and week 5, where we're looking at theory, policy, and frameworks respectively. These 3 weeks, I think, are really going to help you clarify the importance of what we're doing in this particular assignment task. As we develop assignment number 1, I'd like you to consider that there is a discussion forum in the assessment module for assignment number 1. Very important. So this is where our community of practice can get going. I'm aware that in master level units that the engagement in forums perhaps is a bit slower than in a larger unit, but with assessment number 1, let's really use our discussion forum as a way of communicating and unpacking the assignment task. The more questions we ask, the more we'll understand the task. Practice your APA, and the task in week 4 is designed to do that. I will give you comprehensive feedback on your APA. And here we're learning how to use APA. Okay, so I'd rather you did not use one of those tools that you can get in Microsoft Word that does the APAing for you. I'd really like you to learn how to APA, because, and whilst I may sound a bit mad saying this, there is nothing more beautiful than reading a great bit of assessment presentation, whether it's written or multimedia, whatever it may be, that is then accompanied by a robust and correctly put together reference list and APA referencing system. And finally, remember that the weekly readings give you an insight into some of what is going on at the moment, but further research into frameworks and contemporary learning approaches is needed. So I hope you found this helpful, and please get back to me with any feedback on it or any further information that you want. And I look forward to seeing you in the week 5 Zoom session.